different, and then we typed in the words about the flower that we wanted it to say. The AI software created several clips of my voice talking about the flower. We liked that one the best. It all took about 2 minutes. Now, I'm highlighting that because it shows how skillful and fast artificial intelligence is at creating fakes now. They're sometimes called deepfakes. And with important elections coming up here in Portland and nationally, I want you to understand how easy it is to manipulate pictures and voices so you can be a bit skeptical about what you hear. Now, don't be cynical, but do be skeptical. And before we go too far, it's also important to note that AI can be incredibly powerful as a tool for good. We're not slamming AI completely, but I do want you to understand some of the dark side, some of what it can do. Our guide tonight is a man named Al Tompkins. He's a well-known journalism trainer and has taught professional journalists all around the world. He's currently teaching at Syracuse University. I've been a fan of his for years. He recently led our company through an AI awareness course, and I thought you should meet him too. So I did a Zoom interview with him last week. He said artificial intelligence is developing at an amazing speed.
I mean, this technology has moved so fast. I mean, faster than any technology in my lifetime. We've gone from, basically Alexander Graham Bell to cell phones in maybe a year or so. So the technology is moving very, very quickly. And here's what's interesting, that this technology is moving so fast and causing so much disruption already, but the tools that we need to detect it have not moved with the same speed. And I compare this sometimes, if you remember when we really started using email all the time, and it really took a number of years of getting so much spam email for us to start getting email spam detectors.
How about that? Remember that? He said that in the not so distant future, there will probably be software systems that will alert us when AI fakes are on the screen or we're hearing them. But right now, there's few, if any. So it's good to learn how to spot deep fakes. It's also good to remember that we've had some forms of AI for a long time.
Well, let's remember that the AI isn't new. If you have, for example, Photoshop tools and so on have used a version of AI, a kind of AI, for quite a number of years. AI in its most basic form only does one thing. So in Photoshop, for example, we would use AR to replace wood grain, or to take out, if I wanted to take out, one of those squares behind me, I could just do that. And so AI in its most rudimentary form did one thing. But the newer versions of AI now, the ones that are most disruptive, are what we call multimodal AI. So they can change audio and video and text simultaneously. It's not just one thing, it's a bunch of things that you can change all at one time. So I started working with AI, many, many years ago, but all of us have worked with AI and just haven't known it. If, for example, you have a grammar check that comes on and looks at your text and replaces words for you or suggests words, that's a form of artificial intelligence. It's just that it would only do one thing at a time. And this is also a good time for us to say, Pat, that AI isn't the work of the devil. I mean, I think we're going to see that AI actually does some wonderful things. And that it's going to make our life much more productive in important ways. Virtually every industry is going to find some useful way of using artificial intelligence, if they're not already, because it will take care of things that we need to be taken care of.
Okay, got it. AI is not awful, but it is powerful. And you need to know how easy it is to change what you see or hear. Here's one example from Al's presentation, which he gave me permission to use.
Seeing is no longer believing. In the summer of 2023, Adobe ended up adding a new layer of AI in Photoshop. This is currently called Photoshop Beta, and here's how it works. So I have, in this case, a house on a mountainside. And now let's just define that house and say, I want to get rid of that house and I want to replace it with another house, maybe a hunting lodge made of logs. No problem. In a second or two, I've got a number of choices I can make. Maybe we could have a nice snowstorm up there. Generative fill, let's do light blowing snow. And there you go. I started with this, and I ended up with that. It gets more serious when images of hard news start appearing as real news. These images allegedly from Gaza. None of these is real. None is real. And yet several of them have shown up in social media, for example, as real, particularly that last one I just put up there. They're all from Adobe AI, and you can purchase the use of them. You can license them. And none is real. They do come with a little tiny little logo on there that says generated with AI. Adobe says it's disclosing that they're AI, but I can only imagine that most people have no idea what that means, even if they ever see it. Remember, if you saw these images on a phone, how big would the image be? And then how big would that disclosure be? Not very big, maybe a few pixels. If you wonder whether or not these images are making it into the public, oh yes. This image, for example, if I just reverse search Google this, even though it's false, it shows up. This is just the first page of my search, but it's all over the place. None of these, by the way, that used it on this front page is a legitimate news organization. They're all just rumor sites and nonsense. But some real news sites used images that are incredibly close to that. I mean, plausible. Absolutely plausible that people would believe that first image was real.
Pretty fascinating, huh? So people using AI can alter pictures or create fake pictures to show you what they want you to see. And people can do the same types of things with voices of anyone, including politicians, as I demonstrated at the beginning. Here's Al Tompkins again.
AI already is affecting elections right now. Let me give you an example. The day before the primary election in Chicago in March of 2023, I got a phone call from a reporter in Chicago. She said, hey, I need your help. And I said, what's your problem? She said, well, there is a social media audio that is circulating of one of the leading contenders for mayor, a guy named Paul Vallas. And it's shocking. I said, what's shocking about it? She said, well, the audio appears to be Paul Vallas saying that back in my day, if a police officer killed, say, a dozen or a dozen and a half people in the course of his job, it'd be no big deal. And we ought to get back to that. I said, well, let me hear it.
These days, people will accuse a cop of being bad if they kill one person that was running away. Back in my day, cops would kill, say, 17 or 18 civilians in their career, and nobody would bat an eye. Defund the police rhetoric is going to create unrest and lawlessness in the city of Chicago. We need to stop defunding the police and start refunding them.
Now, the reporter told me this sounded sort of like him, but the emphasis was wrong. And that it bothered her that this had never been quoted before, that it's showing up the day before the election. All good concerns. And I said, yeah, I share those concerns. And obviously I'd be really cautious about using something like this. But let me show you something, how this might have come about. So I just took the words that he allegedly said there and plugged them into this audio generator. And with very little skill or work, you can create your own version of what you just heard.
Back in my day, cops would kill 17 or 18 civilians in their career, and nobody would bat an eye.
Okay, and we can change the voice, make it sound different.
Back in my day, cops would kill 17 or 18 civilians in their career, and nobody would bat an eye.
You can slow it down or speed it up or change the pitch. And there's a whole range of voices and ages and genders and ethnicities that you can choose from. The point is, this kind of technology is already showing up in this election cycle.
And that last slide was referring to, just before the Iowa caucuses this year, an ad running on TV that sounded like Donald Trump attacking the popular conservative governor of Iowa, Kim Reynolds. It was running in Iowa. It was not actually Trump speaking. It was an AI-generated voice. It was put out by supporters of his rival, Ron DeSantis. Trump did post those words that were used in the campaign on his Truth Social site, but he never actually spoke those words until AI did it for him. The voice was a fake. So, how can you tell when something's a fake? It's not easy, that's for sure. Let's focus on pictures for a minute. Look at these three faces from Al's presentation. Can you guess which one is fake? They all look pretty good. Yeah, it's the one in the middle. All right, how about these faces? The one on the right looks the most real to me, but in fact, they're all generated by AI. Giveaways include the one in the middle. The skin's maybe too perfect, too smooth. The one on the left, the neck's a bit long. But the freckle or the mole is a nice touch that's a little confusing. It's harder to tell the image was a fake. The right is a fake as well, but they have a lot of good things going on in there. Our expert says if you look closely, though, you will see problems in AI-generated images.
AI has a lot of problems with, interestingly, problems with ears and problems with fingers. And it turns out that when they mugshots, one reason they do a side shot is, in passports too, we're looking at ears. It turns out that our ears are very unique. And it turns out AI has a really big problem making ears. The ears don't match. Sometimes one's way longer than the others. They're just misshapen. Fingers, it turns out the sculptors of old knew a lot. Michelangelo knew a lot. And it turns out that they sculpted hands and fingers all the time because they're so difficult to do. Partly because there's not a consistent algorithm between the size of your fingers, and they grow at different rates as you get older and younger and so on. Very difficult. And AI often makes big mistakes with fingers, commonly will chop off fingers or will add fingers and so on. So hands are, sometimes they're way too big for the person too. So I call them gorilla hands. Just look for all those inconsistencies in photographs.
Okay, well, here's another chance. Here's another example from Al Tompkins' presentation. Look at the picture on the right. The man there has an extra arm. Well, that's not a birth defect. That's an AI mistake and a giveaway. Also, the words on the clothing makes no sense. And then look at the picture on the left. The telephone pole has no wires connected to it. Another AI defect. So we've covered that AI can change pictures and voices and that it's a big problem. But it can be a playground for those who want to create chaos and turn us against each other. They will try to convince us that someone said or did something that they absolutely did not do. But the fake images or sounds make us think it really did happen. And don't just take it from me or our expert Al Tompkins there. Oregon's most senior senator, Ron Wyden, is a member of the U.S. Senate Committee on Intelligence. He is also worried about artificial intelligence being used for deep fakes in politics.
Well, my view is particularly deep fakes, as you see in the political process, are going to undermine elections, they're going to undermine democracy, and we're going to have to take very strong action because already we've got this gigantic misinformation machine out there, and AI just makes it a lot more powerful and easier to use.
Last week, Oregon Governor Tina Kotek signed 2 new bills into law on this subject. The first creates an AI task force. The second requires political campaigns to put notice on a commercial if any part of it has been changed using AI. That was sponsored by Senator Aaron Woods from Wilsonville.
You can be duplicated, voice, facial recognitions, all of that. And then what's being said is not really what you said.
How about that? Senator Wyden noted that several other states have AI bills as well, but he really thinks it's going to take national action to really protect voters from these deep fakes. In the meantime, remember during the upcoming political season, if you see or hear something outrageous on the news or on social media, don't jump to believe it. And even though all this information might seem sort of overwhelming and daunting, also don't let that discourage you.
Now, this is where I usually try to plead with people not to become cynical, but instead to be skeptical, because it's going to be really tempting this year, this election year. It's going to be very tempting for you to say, everybody's a liar. Every politician is a liar. Everybody's a liar. They're all lying to me. I don't believe anybody. I'm just going to live in my shell and forget about it. Or I'm never going to change my mind because I have no idea who else is right, so I'm just going to trust my gut and I'm going to quit exploring. That's not the way to live, because that is cynicism. You don't believe anything. Instead, I'd rather us all be skeptics, and that is open to truth. Stay open to truth. Stay open to proof, because that's what smart people do. Smart people are constantly learning. They're constantly open to evidence. Don't shut down from the evidence. And when something isn't true, but it's widely circulating, I think it's part of our civic duty to call it out, to say, you know what, I'm seeing this circulating. It's just not true. And here's how I know it's not. And that's not being unkind. It's not being rude. You don't have to be mean to anybody. Just say, listen, this is circulating and here's how I know it's not true. Or here are some questions I would ask about that.
Okay, so now you know more about this stuff than probably any of your friends. So go spread the good word, will you? And you can point them back to this show if you want. We'll post it on YouTube when we're done here tonight. In the meantime, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. My first thoughts, this is terrifying for journalists. We need to be extremely careful about what we put on TV and send out over social media. And we are, by the way, but now the danger seems much higher. We need to triple check everything, and we will. But I'd like to know what you think. Any ideas on this? Send us an email, will you? The address is thestory@kgw.com or call and leave a voicemail, 503-226-5090. I learned a lot from this. I hope you did too. And now to an update on drugs in Portland. They're still here. In fact, the area around Multnomah County Central Library has become the latest hotspot for fentanyl use in Portland. It's 5 blocks away from the last one on Southwest Jefferson and 11th. Here's Blair Best with what surrounding businesses are now calling for and the latest from the county on the 90-day fentanyl state of emergency.
Jordan McCormick doesn't go far to find his fix.
It just finds me, I guess, in a way.
That's because he knows where to go when it comes to fentanyl.
I'm here every single day.
He sits across the street from the Multnomah County Central Library on Southwest 10th Avenue and Taylor Street, the new fentanyl hotspot, according to Portland police.
It's accessible, it's in a good spot, it's on the transit, all the things that would make anywhere else in Portland a hotspot for drugs.
Late last week, Portland police arrested 9 people around the library and the North Park blocks. 7 of them were dealers.
I literally just been standing somewhere and they just roll up and just jump out their cars or roll up on the bikes, grab my bag and like, oh, do you have a gun on you?
Police took more than $2,000 in cash, along with about 170 grams of powdered fentanyl and another 100 grams of pills.
Has police cracking down made it harder for you to get fentanyl?
Of course not. No. Let's be honest, no, not at all.
It's out of control.
Sierra manages a store near the library.
People just are using this as a segue to deal drugs, to camp out and be strung out.
The surrounding businesses meet up once a week to talk safety.
It's just a real toxic problem in our city.
I worry that maybe it reflects a little poorly, like when customers come by.
Last week, some business owners asked police for a stronger presence.
We're on board with, trying to do as much as we possibly can to support them. We understand how hard it is for them to run a business in downtown Portland.
We're not going to arrest ourselves out of the fentanyl emergency.
Chris Voss is behind the 90-day fentanyl state of emergency declared late January.
We're trying to make this a safer and better place for everybody, all of downtown.
They're looking to improve lighting around the Central Library to disturb dealers and send outreach teams to connect with users.
They think they're ahead of us, but really we're 2 steps ahead of them. Always.
Now, the mayor's office tells us they support the move to add more lighting around the library. Now, as for those at the library, they say it's a public space reflective of the surrounding community and that they've dealt with drug use and homelessness before. But they support anything the county will do to improve safety. Pat.
All right, Blair, and today Governor Tina Kotek signed House Bill 4002 into law that effectively ends the decriminalization of drugs in Oregon. The recriminalization doesn't take place until September, but money to help set up treatment and deflection efforts should start flowing soon, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so we asked police about that today, about what they're anticipating come September, and here's what they told us.
We've been in talks really early on with other agencies about what that's going to look like, what deflection is going to look like, and at this point it's too early to tell.
All right, so in other words, the deflection program here in Multnomah County is not in place yet, and we checked with the county today. They said they're working on it and it should be in place come September. But I also know that the governor wants police departments to go through training. It's unclear what that deflection program training will look like. But as for people on the streets addicted to fentanyl, some want help, some don't, but they pretty much all agree that getting arrested on repeat isn't working.
The problem is the dealers, we're focused. Our unit, we write a lot of tickets for the Measure 110 for possession of fentanyl, the $100 fine ticket. But we try to spend as much of our limited resources on targeting dealers as possible.
Because I wear a mask and I look like a criminal and stuff. I look like a drug dealer or whatever.
The police definitely don't make it easier at all. People look at us like, oh, just like junkies and drug addicts and, not people, but we are people too.
It's horrible. It's a horrible addiction, It's like something that, it's hard to kick, but it's like, I can't explain it. It's something I want to stop, but it's like at the same time, it's harder than, people don't think how hard it is because they don't know the struggle.
I believe that, Blair, but at the same time, we do hear from viewers and others who say, well, arresting does give people time in jail for detox, and then drug courts are effective too. And I know there's people who argue against that, but they have shown to be effective.
They have, in some cases, we've definitely heard those stories where that works, but we've also heard the stories of people on the streets getting arrested, detoxing in jail, and getting so sick that the first thing they do when they get released is find a dealer, get more fentanyl. And we've heard from experts time and time again that any length of detox lowers one's tolerance, so the likelihood of overdosing is much, much higher.
Yeah, well, it's definitely a tough problem. That's why it's still going on, but hopefully we're getting closer to solutions. Thank you, Blair. The KGW Great Food Drive has officially ended, and we want to say thank you. Because of your generous donations, we surpassed our goal of 1 million meals and instead provided almost 2.5 million meals. That'll go a long way to supporting the Oregon Food Bank and its network of 1,400 food assistance sites. And it's all because of you. So thank you very much. Hey, that's the end of our show. Thanks for watching. And remember, the story, our collective story, that never ends. Straight Talk with Laurel Porter is coming your way next. And I'll see you right back here tomorrow night at 6:30.